Hello. Welcome, everyone. We've got about 15 folks here today so far. I know extension offices are closed, so thanks for all of you who joined us. Let me get the chat going here. I'm Lillian Brislett. If you weren't here for the last class in person or virtually in person, I'm the director of the Food Connection, and I've got our chef Tanya Whitehouse who's going to run the programming today, and I am her buddy. So I'm the one running the behind the scenes. As we talked about last course, this is one of our recommended best practices, having someone doing the tech side and someone doing the actual demo, if that's available to you. Today's plan is to go, so if last week was the technical side of things, this week is thinking through and developing your food demo. Tanya's going to walk you through all of that. A bit of housekeeping. If you're here for course credit, is it Tanya, name, county?
Name, county, email would be great. The proviso to that is you need to put yourself into the CURS system under this activity first, and then Kevin sends me the list and I update the list. If you did not do that already, that's fine. It's just you'll have to go and put yourself in, and then we'll shoot an email over to Kevin to let him know that you're in there so you can get that credit.
Perfect. So let me spotlight Tanya. Heads up, I did a video to show how to do that, so we'll be sharing that with you all, I know I promised, and I will let Tanya take it away for today. If you have questions while we're going through this, pop them in the chat. I'll say them out loud to Tanya, and we're going to get going.
All right. Well, folks, I am here today to show you how we go over any kind of food cooking demonstration or cooking class. And as I'm going to be demoing and talking about things at the same time. So I'm going to take my time. We have an hour today. I'm going to cover a lot of different materials and hopefully 3 different dishes. We'll see how far we get. It depends on your questions and what we need to cover. But right now, I'm just peeling some sweet potatoes because in a moment, I'm going to put in some spiced sweet potato fries. As I'm peeling the potatoes, though, I did want to go over one more little bit of housekeeping is we would like to thank Community Farm Alliance for their grant that has made this workshop possible and all of the other materials that are going to come out of this. As I told you, if you participated last week and received my follow-up email, you'll know that we are about to put out some recipe videos and also some classes, online classes, so you'll see actually how we do these kinds of things. You'll have the ability, you'll receive the first information and the ability to see how we do that. And then Lily went over how we need you to put your credit into the CURS system, so I won't belabor that anymore. These classes are just to help you if you're already offering demos. And I'm going to apologize in advance. My hood is temperature sensitive, and it's temperature sensitive to a range, so it comes on pretty frequently now that it's cold and I can't turn it off, so I do apologize for the noise. If you need me to speak up, please say so and Lily will let me know.
We're pretty good, Tanya. I actually can't hear it, so I think we're golden.
All right, great. Just anything you need, any questions, put it in the chat. Lily will translate that to me. I can't keep up with the chat while I'm doing a demo, so she'll be the translator for all of that. We have a great group of people. I love seeing all the different kinds of folks who are ready and willing or are already offering different food demos and want to see other ways that they can approach it. If you have questions specific to that, let me know. And also I'd be happy to follow up later if it's something that's really specific that we might want to take time with the whole group to do. Now, first of all, online demos are a completely different environment from doing a demo with a class. So when there's a class, I often try to start with some sort of basic sanitation. Now on a demo, first of all, you typically don't have much time for basic sanitation, except if you're working with raw meats or raw eggs, and you might want to talk about cross-contamination a little bit. Oftentimes, I wash my hands before the demo begins. You may want to mention that, or if that is a big part of what you're talking about, safety and sanitation, then you may want to show people how to wash their hands. If you're doing a series of classes, maybe that's something you want to start out with. but that's not something I do on any of my online demos anymore. I wash all my produce off camera, but I do mention that I do that. That is a reminder for people that we actually need to wash all our produce, even maybe if the farmer washed it before. And then the other issue might be time temperature abuse. So if you have a fridge that's close by to your demo area, you may want to keep things in that fridge until you pull them out and kind of show people, look, I'm pulling this out of the fridge because I want to keep it at the appropriate temperature until that point. When you're teaching people about cooking raw meats and eggs to the appropriate temperature, you may want to go over the appropriate temperatures for that, or the best way to take the temperature. Say you're showing someone how to sear off a chicken breast. Show them, you know, that they need to insert it deep within the breast to the center point to where the thermometer can get to, can take an accurate temperature. But other than that, I just sort of, I don't cook a lot with meats. I do cook a lot with eggs with our audiences. And a lot of times it's an option because I do try to keep things within a certain budget. And then oftentimes I often say, bring in cooked chicken or use cooked bacon or use cooked ground beef. And I let them take care of that ahead of time. So that's one way you could avoid that kind of sanitary issue. If you haven't, that's about all I go over when it comes to online demos. If you have any other questions about that, just let me know. The other thing I think I showed you last week for a visual aid, I have these little darker, colorful cutting boards. Those are great for visual aids, but they're also great for cross contamination too. So what you may want to do is cut any raw meats on a darker board like this, and then show that you're taking that board and anything that touched that raw product out of the frame, and that you know, that's a way to show them to prevent cross contamination. All right, next thing that I like to cover is knife safety. And right now I'm just cutting up this sweet potato into wedges like you would for fries, because that's basically what we're making. And the one thing that I like to go over is that we cut toward our cutting board, not toward ourselves, that we use a sharp knife because that's safer than a dull knife, and that we hold the knife properly. So let me throw these sweet potatoes into a bowl, and I'll go over that the way I do with students in a demo. So if you've got your knife here, you want to wrap your cutting hand, the bottom 3 fingers, around the handle up to the finger guard right here. You want to place thumb and forefinger on either side of the metal and pinch. You're actually touching the metal here. Holding it back here doesn't really do a lot for you, especially stability wise, and putting your finger up here doesn't do anything for that either. So we want to choke up on the blade and thumb and forefinger over here. It's the same even if you cut with your left hand. You want your hand at the thickest part of the blade because that gives you the most stability. With the other hand, we always love to say we use the Wildcat Claw, and that is curling all your fingers up underneath so that they stay out of the way of the blade. I usually try to point out to be careful not to put your pinky or thumb down because that's what people tend to do. That's what I used to do. So we want to tuck everything up underneath. Some people find it easier to put their thumb over those fingers, but that keeps everything out of the way. I also like to point out that your knuckles can then be used as a guide, and that way you make really straight cuts. For knife safety, I also like to point out that the tip of the knife more often hits the cutting board before anything else, and then the blade is pushed down in order to do the work. If there are small items, I try to make sure that people don't go through their fingers right here, that you still have to use that claw and you still want to hold it to the side as you're cutting. I also point out, now when you are doing it virtually online, it's not as much as of a concern to you because no one's going to be dropping anything into your sink, but I like to remind the audience that you never put a knife into a sink full of soapy water because someone could get cut on it. I also remind viewers at home that if they should drop a knife, just to let it fall and try not to catch it. All right, do we have viewing problems?
Yeah, my spotlight's not working. I thought I had this all figured out. It looks like both of them are pinned. Are you all in speaker view?
So is it a switch to gallery view?
I can see it, Lillian, because I have it set on speaker view.
I think that's maybe the issue. So you need to, if you're in gallery view, so up in the top of your screen, there's sort of, it says view in the top right corner, and go to speaker view. And that should have both videos pinned. Great, thanks y'all. We're good, Tanya.
All right, so the other thing, I'm actually kind of going back to my recipe here. So I've got all my sweet potatoes cut up. I've drizzled them just with a little bit of oil, some salt, and some pepper. And now I'm gonna make a little spice mix. Now, see my kit here last week? If you were with us, I talked a lot about making kits and that helping you. Number one, it's really visually beautiful. So you've got the color of the fresh veg over here. You've got all of these spices lined up. Visually, it's appealing. It keeps all your stuff in one place. It helps you remember all of the stuff you need to use. Because let me tell you, when you're on camera, you might forget an item or two. I've done that. And then for this, it's nice because all I have to do, these, you can pre-measure them, or if you want to show people, how, you know, the measuring process, you can do that. I haven't pre-measured because I like to kind of be free and wheeling with this spice mixture. But I'm going to take a little bit of chili powder. This is an on-show chili powder, about a teaspoon of that, about a teaspoon of cumin. That's all that's left there. I'm going to do just a pinch of allspice, a pinch of cayenne. I'm going to do at least a teaspoon of our wonderful bourbon smoked paprika, produced by Bourbon Barrel Foods in Louisville. I'm going to do about a quarter of a teaspoon of garlic powder and a quarter teaspoon of onion powder. Now you can use any spice mix you like on these potatoes. That is just a nice warm fallish. You could use taco seasoning. You could use 5-spice. So I like to mix my spices ahead so that they are evenly distributed on my potatoes. And then it's just a quick toss. And I hope you can see the overhead now. If you're not comfortable with that method, then all you have to do is use a spatula to stir everything around. Same thing in a pan. If you're not comfortable with the pan toss, and I know your audience members probably won't be, use that spatula. I'm going to spread these out. I have a parchment lined sheet pan here. And as you can see, I'm just bringing things into view of the camera. What's a good tip always is having plenty of space to get rid of any of your extraneous and used vegetables. And then I talked about that Sani rag last time, right? There's one under my cutting board and there's one here. And that way I can very quickly wipe down my hands. I don't have a sanitation issue yet. So I'm just gonna wipe down my hands quickly. And then I'm gonna pull these off camera and go into the oven. Now, something like a sweet potato fry is gonna take a little bit of time. So what I did for magic of TV is I went ahead and prepped some up. So I'm gonna pull some out immediately. And ta-da, here are our finished sweet potato fries. So that's something you want to keep in mind. If something's going to take a while, like if you're doing a pasta, if you're doing something that needs to roast for quite a bit of time, if you're doing something that needs to finish in the oven, either have something planned to show while, or else you're just standing there waiting, or do this pre-prepped step. And that means you are doing double the prep. So just keep that in mind as well. Now, I'm gonna go into two different methods. We have talked mostly about demos and cooking classes. So what's the difference between a demo and a cooking class? Well, one of the things is that demos are typically really quick. You're doing all the work. No one's really following along, unless they used to, like they used to for cooking shows, try to keep up with you. But more than anything, you are just trying to show the skills, show the steps, and get the recipe done. So I'm going to show you a frittata 2 ways. One is sort of the demo way, and one is sort of the cooking class way. So I wanted to show you, I have 2 kits. I'm going to show you the demo way first. So everything in my kit is already cut up. I took the liberty of going ahead and mincing my garlic, cutting up my pepper, cutting up my onion, and I have just some sun-dried tomatoes so I could toss those in. My greens are already washed. And I've already got my eggs cracked. Now, this is a great step. If you don't want to take the time to turn around and wash your hands after you crack your eggs, go ahead and have them pre-cracked. So I will show the method for whisking. I'm going to put in a pinch of salt. Now, another thing that I usually teach when students come into the kitchen is fire safety. And one of the things that I would like to mention in regard to that, if you are doing an online demo, and this is mostly because I've set a hot pad on fire during a demo, is just stay calm. It happened. I was about to pull something off the stove, and I put the hot pad right next to it that I was going to use, and then I got to talking, and I sort of slid the hot pad into the flame. So you just smother. I just used another hot pad to smother it. It stank to me, but fortunately the people at home didn't have to do it. Just stay calm, smother or cover it. Don't pour water on it. I think most of us, although not all, we found out the hard way. People know not to put water on a grease fire or a cooking fire. And then I just went on with my demo. So that's the biggest part I could say, is just to stay calm. Also, in regard to first aid, your buddy is very important when that happens. I also have cut myself on camera. And you might want to establish, if you have a buddy, some sort of little signal to go, I need to go off camera and put a Band-Aid and a glove on, so that you know, that kind of thing. Lily fortunately saw that I was struggling with a paper towel trying to keep that out of view, and she took over on the broadcast for me. So that is always important. These things might happen. Again, the important thing is to stay calm. So I am putting my first, I'm going to pull you over to the stove, and I am putting, let's see if I can get you down in here. Now, some of you may think, why isn't she like putting me way down in the pan? And that's mostly because I have very sensitive equipment. I need to turn you around. Whoops, wrong way. Sorry about that, folks. And it's still, let me try this again. There we go. There we go.
Perfect.
Okay.
Oh, I went back.
I hit it one more time. There we go. All right. Don't forget that your equipment is heat and moisture sensitive. And I'm even talking about steam. So you don't want to have your equipment directly over the heat. I would even say, even with an induction burner, you don't want, especially something, if you have an expensive camera, you don't want anything over the heat. I'm going to add just a little pour of oil. If you want to measure out your oil and like say it's a tablespoon or so, that's fine. I usually just pour enough until it coats the bottom of the pan. I like to talk to the audience about how I like to get my pan hot before I pour in the oil, so that way the oil is not coming up to the smoke point at the same time. And then my biggest instruction at this point is just how to saute, right? So if I've got my pan hot, if I've got my oil at the right temperature, which I try to tell them about how it will shimmer, and it's starting to. You can also talk to them about tossing in one little piece of something. So I'm gonna throw in some of that onion, some mixed bell peppers. I'm gonna let that saute just for a minute. Again, if you're not comfortable with flipping, then all you have to do is use your spatula. And then I like to talk about the goals of what we're doing here. So we're trying to evaporate water. We're trying to, once we evaporate the water, then the sugars will caramelize. I try to talk about what we're looking for. So we're looking for the onions to get translucent. And this is all a part of that prattle. If you notice, I don't shut up very much. And that's because I don't like to leave a lot of space, unless like I'm being asked a question. I don't like a lot of dead air, either visually or auditorially, orally. So I like to talk about the things that we're looking for here. And I like to talk about the fact that saute means to jump. So we want our food moving around. It's fairly high heat. We want the food moving around. It's a medium high burner there. We're trying to look for a little bit of color, which you're starting to get, and for our peppers to get a little tender. Now, a frittata is a great year-round recipe to show folks because it's fast, it's cheap. You can incorporate just about any seasonal veg. I have these lovely greens right here. They are from Four Petal Farm in Banner, Kentucky, about 2.5 hours away. Now that my onions and peppers have sauteed, I'm gonna add the garlic. The garlic is small and it's oily, so we don't wanna add it at the same time because it can burn. If you have a lot of onions producing a lot of liquid, then your garlic might be okay. There are some recipes, but you really gotta watch it at this high heat. So saute that about a minute. And then we'll put in these lovely mixed greens. This is a mix of arugula, kale, tatsoi, pak choi, little variety of everything in here. And we can kind of bulk this up because greens cook down so low. I'm gonna salt that and a little bit of pepper. And then I am just gonna wilt these greens a tiny bit. And then this is when I advise my audience to turn their heat down to about medium high, because we're about to add our eggs. And eggs coagulate very quickly at a very low heat, about 140 degrees Fahrenheit. So I'm gonna put that in there. I'm gonna toss in just a few of these sun-dried tomatoes. And then when you're talking to people about frittatas, if they're not familiar with it, what you're gonna find happens is they try to make scrambled eggs. So you have to go over the frittata technique. So that's just to leave everything kind of still. And if they need to, push everything in around the corner, tilt it so that the egg gets in between all of the veg. Maybe push it in a little bit more. And then once you get just a wee bit of a crust around the outside, not exactly a crust, but a firm outside, sprinkle with a little cheese. This is just some parm. And we're gonna pop this in the oven. Now, so this is important. If you are doing this live, you would either want to have something else to prepare. A lot of times I'll do a salad and show people how to do a vinaigrette for a salad. So I've got this second pan on, and we're gonna go back to our overhead. So if I'm doing a class, this is how I would do it. Here is my kit. Because think about this, your audience is doing everything with you, every part with you. Now I'm gonna go through this much quicker than I would for a class, just so we can cover all of this today. But these are the ways that I break down veg. Now, and I really wanted to talk to you about this because the most important thing I try to stress when I'm breaking down veg is safety, of course, but also stability and manageability. So we're trying to get everything we break down stable and into a manageable size. If you're working with kids, you especially want to stress that manageable size piece because their hands are smaller and they don't have the same hand-eye coordination yet. I will teach kids as young as 9 how to use a chef's knife though, because they do have that coordination. So I'm going to cut off the stem end. I'm cutting off the root end. Now I've got a stable side. We're going to cut this in half because that makes it a manageable size, and also it makes it easy to get this papery peel off. I also like to talk about taking the second layer off if it's kind of leathery or if it's papery as well. So we peel all that off, toss that into our discard bowl. Now for just a julienne, it's really easy. We just follow these lines. We're cutting stem to root, and you can use your knuckles as a guide. So we're just making slices, and you can see it's got a little bit of the root left. So we're not cutting through the equator. About the only time I cut through the equator of an onion is when I make onion rings. I almost always cut North Pole to South Pole. Okay, so that's our onion, and I've got my little prep bowl for that to go into right here. If you want to talk about what can go together, sometimes I get questions about that. So your peppers and your onions can always go together. So cutting off the stem and the bottom of the pepper, making a vertical slit, that way that opens it up and I can get my knife in. Still cutting away from myself. I am just curving my knife around, still not cutting toward me. I'm just reaching in and rolling the center part around as I cut it out. That way I get the seed pod and all of the pith at the same time. Smash it a little bit. If there's any pith left, there's not much, but right here we can just slide our knife, moving away from ourselves. Now this is a pretty big piece, so I might tell students to cut it in half, and then that way we can cut up our strips of bell pepper. Now, when you're dealing with certain audiences, you may or may not want to work with fresh garlic. I like to show people the method of using it because I don't think there's anything better than fresh garlic. It is also affordable, especially in small amounts. And it doesn't have the harshness, especially to your system, that powdered garlic can, if people find it available. But a lot of people just have powdered garlic in their pantry, and that is a perfectly fine substitute if you'd like to do that. But I like to show people how to pop garlic out of the paper. It's actually one of my favorite things to do. To smash those cloves of garlic. And I also will explain the difference between garlic cloves and a head of garlic. So mince, right? So we've had the julienne, and now we're going to learn how to mince. So we chop this up. Important to use the claw continually, even if it's something that's small. I just slice it down to the little woody end. And then everybody gets to do that move that they've learned from Food Network. You just put your knife down, put your hand on the back, and rock it up and down, moving it back and forward between the garlic. And you may need to reposition a couple times, knock it off with your knife. And you want everything about 1/8 of an inch or smaller, and importantly, the same size. So there's that. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead. And if we're back over here, my pan is super hot. I'm gonna put just a little bit of oil in, and we're gonna repeat that process with throwing the onions and peppers in. While I'm doing that, I wanna get my garlic off the board and into my container. Ready and waiting over here at the side. Put any excess back into here. I've got my greens ready to go. Cleaning off my board pretty well. Again, that's might be important if you're doing a bunch of different veg at once and it's stained, like if I'm doing mushrooms in a moment, mushrooms stain really bad, so it's good to have your rag to wipe all that down. I'm going to crack these eggs on camera. If that's a method you want to show, that's fine. I know some of you may be doing baking, so you really do want to show how to measure ingredients for baking and things like that. Those might be important in a demo, but I would reserve those kinds of things for me personally for a class. All right, So we're going to show whisking. And I like to talk about egg cookery a lot because it's fast, it's cheap, and a lot of people are just not familiar. You got to watch your whisks because they're so handle heavy. So I've got everything ready to go over here. The other thing that I might change for on camera for a class is that I'm going to actually grate my cheese onto the top. You have time for these things. And if you have young viewers, you're probably gonna have to slow down and let them catch up if they're not used to cooking. So I've got my, and then the other thing you may have to do is sort of squish your timeline down a little bit. So maybe I don't have time to let these saute the full 4 to 5 minutes, especially if you're doing a lot of recipes at one time. So I might squish my timeline and just say, okay, we're gonna go ahead and do this step. And now I'm gonna add those greens again. If you have big greens, you may wanna show the class how to stem and either tear or chop up those greens. I mean, we have leafy greens just about year round now, and even through the winter, because thanks to extended season farming. So greens are a good one to use on camera. They're so healthy, and a lot of people have an adverse reaction to them because they've been introduced them in a way that doesn't highlight them and make them delicious. So, all right, so we get everything in the bottom, toss in those tomatoes and our egg. What's great about frittata is that it's a meal at any point. It could be breakfast, lunch, dinner. You can add just some bread, crusty bread, and a salad, and it makes a fantastic meal. You can add leftovers to it. Oh, I said it was grating. So we're gonna grate the cheese on top this time, and the kids love doing this. If you're doing a synchronous class, they love doing this because they get to add so much cheese, and you can never have too much cheese, right? So we're gonna do that, and then we're gonna pop this one in the oven. And at this point, you wanna talk about fire safety. I'll bring you back over here in that, and I'll turn this back around. I think I just touched the wrong thing, but we'll turn this back around. Here we go. Fire safety, or actually hot metal safety. So the one thing that we do try to emphasize is that treat all metal as hot. And the one thing that you might forget because you're used to grabbing the handle on a skillet like this is that this has just come out of a 450-degree oven. So that's something you want to really emphasize with your audience, is to not touch any metal. Just assume that it's all hot without any kind of hot pad. Now, the other thing that I love to do frittatas, the reason I love to do frittatas is the flip. Normally you let a frittata rest just for a moment. But this one's nice, and you have to commit so that you can go 1, 2, and 3, and then pull that out, cut it into wedges, and serve. All right, so that's dish number 2. One other thing I wanted to show you about one way to manage your space while you do these demos. If you're doing a lot of different wines, as you can see, I'm just removing my cutting board, and that's so, and I can put one back in its place. We'll just use this one. If you don't have the multiple cutting boards, again, try to keep your dampened rag ready. One other thing that helps, I wanted to show you this. This is just a container. It's usually what we put sauces in, but I have it full of sandy water, and that's what I'm kind of keeping, helps to corral a lot of your stuff. And that's when I'm keeping all of my knife, that's why I like to use metal, so I don't poke holes in it, and all my spoons, all of my spatulas and things can go in there. And it does, because I am bad about losing spatulas, especially when I'm on camera. The next thing I want to show you is just how to prioritize the kind of prep that you do. And we're going to do a real quick roasted veg on polenta. And I'm checking my time here. Looks like we're looking good on time, but yell at me if I'm going way too fast. So here's a couple of ways that I might set up a kit. You saw how I had the two different kinds for demo versus classroom, but there are other ways you can get prepared for it too. So I have washed all of this, and I would mention that to my audience. And you notice that I went ahead and stemmed the majority of these mushrooms, but I left 3, and that's so I can demo stemming. You don't want to make any kind of assumptions about people's cooking abilities. Let's just assume that people haven't cooked that much before. So you want to show them things like, especially in a class, and even in a demo, if you do it like this, you could go through very quickly. Show them those last 3, give them the idea of how to stem. And I've done the same thing with my Brussels sprouts. These are all already peeled and cut up, but I have a couple here so that I can demonstrate how to take the woody end off to pull off any outer leaves. And then again, I think it's important to show that claw and how to use it along the side safely as you quarter Brussels sprouts, which are, these are my favorite. I just can't wait for fall for these and fall squashes, let me tell you. So get it stable, have, and then quarter.
Yeah, I just want to jump in and say, we said this last class, but we are often as much demoing the techniques as we are the recipes. So we hook them with the recipe, and we sneakily, if this is the spinach in your brownies or whatever people do to sneak their kids' vegetables, it's technique as much as recipe.
Right, and you're not gonna, I mean, this isn't a culinary school, so don't worry if they don't walk away being able to do this, but just the exposure helps. And especially if you're doing a class, a synchronous class, one thing I've put throughout my notes is to remind you to tell people the reason why that they love live classes, and especially coming into this space, is that they can do it and they can look at you and they can go, "Is that okay?" And they want that feedback. So without being near you and having that interaction, it's really important for you to reassure your audience and be like, "Look, you don't have to do it like me." Like, I really try not to cut like I used to as a chef in a restaurant, when you're just like in Julie and Julia, where she's learning how to cut the onion. I try to tell people, look, you don't have to cut it like this, unless I'm just flying through a demo to get us to cooking. I really try to slow myself down, and then I try to reassure the audience, look, cut at your pace. I have classes that have kids 9 to 16 years old. The 16-year-olds are a lot more experienced than the 9-year-olds, and the 9-year-olds get a little nervous because they can't keep up. So I keep trying to reassure them, look, go at your pace, you'll catch up, we'll all be fine. We're all going to be waiting at the end to eat together. So when kids rush, they're more likely to cut themselves. So really reassure them, and reassure them that if it doesn't look like yours, that's okay. They're learning, and the more that they do it, the more it will look like yours.
Hey, Tanya, one more question while you're prepping veg.
Yes. Yes.
Sandy water, can you explain what the Sanidate tabs are? I'm assuming it's Sanidate. I'm bringing it over from produce safety. But...
Yes, it is a quaternary ammonia sanitizer. It is food grade at the appropriate concentrations. It comes in a tablet. You drop the tablet into a gallon of water, or however much you need, and you use it that day, because it can evaporate very quickly, like bleach water. You don't want to leave, bleach water isn't a sanitizer after about a day, because the concentration changes because it evaporates. So you just drop this tab down in water. You can get prepared sanitizer in a spray bottle, and that is actually much more stable. But I like the Sani tabs because we used to travel a lot, and that's a lot easier to carry around and add to water than dragging a gallon of sanitizer with you when you have so much else to do. So that's why we use that in this kitchen. But we also right now, especially with all our extra sanitary steps, we do have wipes, we do have sprays that are approved by the CDC UPC for all our food safe surfaces.
Thanks.
All right, so what I might do is have lots of things already chopped up, and then just you're showing the skill and the technique, right? A lot of people, when they're watching these demos, they want to solve some kind of problem. So whether that's, I want to cook more and I don't know how, or I need ideas for this vegetable, or help, I have a mountain of kale and I need lots of different things to do with it, or I have health issues and I'd like to do something about that by using my food, and that can be really difficult because you're changing someone's whole socialization and culture around food. So just remember the reason why that your audience is coming to you, and keep that in mind as you're showing these demos. One of the most important parts of your demo is recipe selection. We did this kind of train the trainer on some students because we were hoping to have little chef ambassadors go out and do demos on campus for healthy foods. And the really fascinating thing was when they tried to choose the dish that they wanted to do, a lot of them wanted to do favorite dishes. And I remember we had one student who just insisted that she wanted to do French onion soup. And I kept trying to talk to her about the fact that, I'm gonna grab a bowl that's right here. I kept having to talk to her about the fact that, well, French onion soup has two main components, both of which take a very long time and aren't easy to demo out at a table in the middle of campus. So you really have to select your recipe for something that is considers people's time, that is quick, that has very few ingredients. If you especially are looking to demo fresh, local ingredients, then you want to focus on that ingredient. So a lot of times I'll try to keep my recipes to 5 ingredients or less. And now that doesn't mean that I don't use some ingredients that might challenge people, especially when it comes to fresh local veg. For some people, bok choy is a new experience, or maybe some kind of false squash, kabocha. I introduce people to kabocha all the time because it's one of my absolute favorites. I would feel bad if people missed out on kabocha. I do a lot of demos with beets because people think they hate beets, and it's actually not true. They just haven't had good exposure to beets. All right, so I am just drizzling all this veg. This is one of my favorite combos. I just did some pizzas like this. So it's just mushrooms, red onion, the Brussels sprouts. I'm going to stick those in the oven. Pull out and see if you did your sweet potato fries. They would be ready by now if you were doing some other recipe. My second frittata is done by now, so that's great timing. We're putting that in. And I've got one more pan right here for these Brussels sprouts. And notice I really like to use a large bowl for roasting. And roasting is one of my favorite things to show people, because I think if they've tried a veg another way, if the only Brussels sprouts people have had are there's bird's eye or whatever that are in the frozen section, I mean, I'm a veggie lover and I just can't do them. I just think they're wrong. So if that's the only way people have had Brussels sprouts, then I understand why they are like, no, I don't want to try those Brussels sprouts. But if you've had them just roasted, or roasted with some onion, or if people are meat eaters and pork eaters, then with a little bacon, that's always a good way to get them to try new veg like that. Roasting is amazing because you get that little bit of char that everybody loves. Like, that's why we love to grill. And you get that little bit of caramelization of the sugars. And it's always a positive experience. I have converted a lot of people in that way. Let's get back to recipes while we're waiting on that. While we are waiting on that as well, I'm going to heat up some veggie stock, and I'm going to do a real quick polenta. And so I'm going to move you back over while I talk, because you can still hear me, fortunately. Yay, technology. And I'm gonna bring you over here and turn you around again. Oh no, I don't have to turn you around. Fantastic. All right, so I've got some Weisenberger cornmeal. I've got a little pot right here. Let me adjust. All right, got a little pot right here. Perfect.
There you go.
And I've got 3 cups of veggie stock that we make here. Obviously, you could use water, and I like to remind people of the other options. You could use 3 cups of water. We make veggie stock all the time. All of the stuff I've been cutting today, I throw into my discard bowl. If it's just veg, then I keep all of it. We throw it in the freezer. And then when we get enough, we'll make a big pot of veg stock. You can cool that down and throw it into quart containers and into your freezer and just pull out whatever you need. It's super flavorful, a way to add a lot of flavor without adding salt or fat or anything like that. So I'm a big proponent of the so we're going to bring this up to a boil. I'll put this down. Alongside that, in just a moment, I'm going to be adding 1 cup of Weisenberger white stone ground cornmeal. Cornmeal is great. Polenta is great to show. I love showing it because a lot of people have cornmeal in their pantry, in their kitchen. You want to focus on things that people already have in their kitchen. That's another reason to keep your ingredients low. But a lot of people who might make cornbread on occasion would have a lot of times plain cornmeal in their kitchen. And I like showing them that you don't just have to make cornbread, that you can actually make polenta. I've got just a little bit of salt here. And since I've already made some polenta, we're gonna shorten my timeline here. We're gonna pretend that this veg stock is already at a boil because I wanna show you the technique, right? So what you're gonna do is once your here's our clean whisk. Once your veg stock comes to a boil, you want to slowly shake. And notice that I'm kind of having to come from the back end on this. You want to slowly pour and shake your cornmeal in so that you don't get lumps. I didn't do this as well with my first batch, so you may see a few lumps in that. All right, and you want to pour 1 cup of cornmeal to 3 cups of liquid. You could also do a combination of water and dairy, like milk or cream. And then I'm going to put in about a teaspoon of kosher salt. And if this were at a boil, then what I would do is once that comes back up to a boil with the cornmeal in it, I want to turn it way down to the lowest simmer that your stove can handle. And then you're going to simmer that for about 20, 30 minutes, stirring and whisking all the while. And then you can taste it for seasoning and take it off. But because of the magic of TV, I've got my polenta right here. And so the last piece of this, you could stop there. You could just show folks your final dish. Actually, I can show you the polenta right there, and then we'll move back around over here. You can show people your final dish, or you can do what I like to do, and that's plate it up. Now, this is pretty important for any 4-Hers who are doing culinary challenge. They are graded on their plating, and at national, it's a huge part of how they get graded in the competition. So it's something I like to show when we do the cooking clubs. Is to how to plate the food. So basically, I'm just going to do little serving selections for you. Please put questions into the chat. And then if there are any final questions, we can go over that.
Tanya, for the Sanidate in the utensil holder, does it need to be sanitizing water? Would regular water work?
Regular water would work as long as it's just, utensils that are going into the food and then back into the water. We use, of course, I'm from the restaurant background, so we used to use the Sani water. You don't have to do that. Regular hot water would be good. if you're using them for a long time and you would want to change out that water, you know, if when we were in the restaurant, if someone had a moment and they were a really super nice person, they would go around changing everybody's utensil cans. So that's one thing you want to, you know, after it gets a little schmutzy, it's not really cleaning anything off anymore. So you might want to change that out if you're going to use it long term, if you're doing a really long demo or a really long class, or have a backup, something like that. All right. Any other questions about selecting a recipe? I usually will rewrite anything that I get offline because I like it to be super simple. And sometimes people online have different goals than I do. More than anything, I'm trying to stress that local seasonal veg and make that stand out. So I'll rewrite things because some of these steps they put you through, I don't think they're great for the home cook. So I think they're just showing off. And some cooks are really big on a lot of utensils, and I am not big on all kinds of gadgets. So, and you don't know if your audience has accessibility to those kind of gadgets. I mean, some of our audience members may have a hard time getting their stove fixed by their landlord, you know. So we have to keep things as simple and as easy and repeatable as possible. We want to think about people's budgets. I don't like to put a lot of things in like tarragon. In fact, if I give someone a recipe that has tarragon in it, I usually will include the tarragon with the recipe because who uses tarragon that much? So try to keep any kind of pantry items to something people might have around, like cinnamon's okay, paprika, maybe cumin, garlic powder, onion powder. A lot of people have those sorts of things around. Some really basic stuff. Don't get too esoteric unless it's really important, and then make it an option. Say optional tarragon, optional Mexican oregano, or whatever, smoked paprika versus paprika, because you know you want to really consider people's budgets when we're doing this. That's why I've chosen a lot of these dishes, because they're very budget friendly. All right, I'm gonna slice up this. See, I'm doing myself a disservice by being so organized because now I'm going, where's all my stuff? Slice up a little bit of the frittata. Put a couple of pieces of that over here, and just grab my spat again. Any further questions? Have you run into anything as you all have been providing demos? And then our last dish is going to be the polenta. So you get a nice stiff polenta. You know, polenta is done. This is kind of an Italian grandmother thing. You know, polenta is done when you can put your spoon in it and it stands up straight. Usually a wooden spoon. We're not allowed those. But we put a little spoon of polenta in the middle. And, oh, gorgeous. I like a little bit more color, but we've got a little bit of a streamlined timeline, right? So this is something, like I said, may want to roast things a little bit ahead, but we do have gorgeous color. So we'll put, I love the whole polenta dish. With veggies on top, it's great for using up all of that kale and those greens. You get the caramelization on the red onion and those chunky mushrooms. And if you wanted to, you could show people how to poach or fry an egg and put on top of that.
Hey, T.
So, yes.
So how do you time your demos? So we had a question earlier that I took the liberty of asking. I said about 15 to 20 minutes per recipe. Is that about what we budget? And then how do you figure out how to have the appropriate pacing, or what are some tips you use for yourself to pace it through so that, because you're super speedy, and people who are comfortable cooking could be pretty speedy. So what are your tricks there?
My tricks are, it's just that thinking ahead. And that's one thing that you'll have to spend a lot of time doing. People don't understand when you get ready to do a demo, it's not just taking the food and throwing it in a saute pan. You really have to consider, a lot of times what I do, and I think I mentioned this last week, is I start with the final dish that I want, and then I back out. So I start with the dish and I think, well, my biggest priorities are that seasonal veg, right? So I've already, by choosing the recipe, I've picked that out. My second thing is, what are the skills that will translate as best as possible in this amount of time and in this space where they're not with me and I can't correct anything, right? You have to consider that. So I back it out. So for example, showing you today, I knew I was going to magic of TV the sweet potato fries. And I knew I was going to prep to a different degree the veg to go with the polenta and have the polenta ready to go, because that can take 20 to 30 minutes. I've done 3 pizzas. That was kind of crazy. Sometimes I don't pace things well. I did for Kentucky Farm Share Coalition. I did pizzas and I wanted to highlight everything that was going to come in the fall box. And I did 3 pizzas in half an hour. I was scrambling. So that was showing them the dough, putting 3 different ones together, showing it. The last one I pressed out, you know, of course I had doughs ready because they had to rise for an hour. But that was, sometimes I don't, and sometimes I'm scrambling. And sometimes, like, you have to be in the good state of mind, even leading up to it. Like, we had a real busy week when I did a chef hacks, and I really tried to put too much into what was a 20 to 30 minute video, and I don't think I conveyed anything very well because it was scrambling too much. So it's best to keep everything simple. Focus on the veg. Like, what I would love, what we did over the summer and I loved, is that I would take a veg and then do 2 to 3 recipes based on that veg. So then you could kind of show the different ways. You could have some of it pre-prepared, or you could show how to break it down. But since you're focusing on that one veg, then you could kind of show the whole spectrum of how you work with this one product.
Awesome.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
There, for some extra resources, there are some places that I love to go. Now, don't forget our website. We have tons of recipes. On our YouTube channel, we have tons of videos, recipe videos. All of our demos have shown up there. All of our demos are on our Facebook page and on any of our partners. The other things that I love for budget-friendly, veggie-forward kind of recipes are Budget Bites. And that is just www.budgetbites.com. Oh yes, and the Seasonal Resource Hub, that has not only recipes and videos, but it has some social media cards that have veggie tips and tricks. So you can just plug into your own social media. And that is all available for you to use. But the Budget Bites is great. And then, oh, great. So, and I'm going to send this recipe out to you like I did last week. And then Leanne Brown is a cookbook author. She has one called Good and Cheap. And it's wonderful because it is based on a SNAP budget, a daily SNAP budget. And she has everything priced out. And everything's from scratch, but it's simple, it's straightforward. It doesn't shy away from ingredients. While still keeping in this budget. So it's really, and you can download that cookbook for free. You can pay it forward to donate to other organizations. It's a really neat website. And it's also in Spanish if you are working with clientele who speak primarily Spanish.
Great. Well, we've got just 2 minutes left. As you know, we will send out the PowerPoint deck. You'll have access to the recording of today. You've got links to the hub. I'm going to upload that little video on how to do the spotlight. And Tanya, what's the next step?
The next step is we'll be producing our first recipe video. That will be very brief. It's a tasty style recipe video on a fall veg. And we'll be pushing that out to everyone. That also will be on our YouTube channel. And then on December 8th, let me double check my date just to make sure, but I'm positive it's on Tuesday, December 8th, same time. We will have a synchronous class that you can join via Zoom. We'll send out the ingredients ahead of time and you will cook with me. So you will see what it's like for your participants to participate in an online synchronous cooking class and provide me with feedback as to how to make them better.
Perfect. Well, thanks you all so much. Be sure you put your name, county, and email in the chat if you're here for KERS credit. Thanks to Community Farm Alliance, our partner on this program. And thanks, let's all give Tanya a virtual little thumbs up or hands. I can do this. Yay. Yay. So thanks you all. Please don't hesitate to reach out with any questions. You can email Tanya, you can reach out to me, and we'll hopefully see you on the 8th.